For many years, UFOs have been blurred, indistinguishable lights in the sky. Until now.
There are alien creatures visiting this planet who were captured by the militaries.
They are hiding. They do have captured aliens in Brazil alive.
Eu nunca vi uma criatura desse tipo.
We can prove that alien beings had really visited our planet.
In the early months of 1996, Brazil, it is claimed, was the unwitting victim of an alien invasion, and one small town, Varginha, was at the center of it. A minor industrial town of 100,000 inhabitants, none of them realizing that they were soon to be driven into a panic by the extraordinary events that would engulf them.
About 2 a.m. in the morning of the January 20th, some satellites from the United States detected an object entering Earth's atmosphere.
American NORAD alerted the Brazilian authorities because we don't have this kind of defense satellite system.
As soon as it became clear that whatever it was that the radar was picking up had entered Brazilian airspace, the Air Force was scrambled.
As soon as they got above Brazil in our atmosphere, our defense system captured the images. We called those little points in the radar, we call them plots. So one of the plots started to lose altitude, and it was going lower, lower, down and down, and disappeared.
While this object was falling down, it was observed by a few witnesses. It was very strange because some of them could describe an object like a cigar-shaped format.
It was around 1 o'clock in the morning, and we saw an object flying over with a lot of smoke coming from it. So I called my husband over, and we both looked at it.
I started to ask, what was this? It was some kind of submarine flying over. It was long, and on its rear it seemed like there were bits flying behind it, like when you tie ribbons to a fan. It was the size of a minibus, with lots of smoke. I have never seen anything like it in my life.
Two conclusions: something landed or something crashed. So they got the coordinates, latitude and longitude, and looked for the nearest military facility, and it was the Army school here.
Which happens to be only 20 miles away from Virginia.
The Army school was alerted by the Air Force that an unidentified craft had crashed.
So the Army school knew everything that was going on.
But the public themselves were now beginning to report strange lights in the sky, and some talked of having seen a crash but not a plane crash. Something more consistent with this, an out-of-control missile. These public reports had now put the fire brigade on red alert. They went to where the reports of the crash had come from, but they had a surprise waiting for them.
When they arrived there, the Army was already there.
The fire brigade linked up with the Army in a joint operation. No crashed craft was found in this operation, but what they did find, according to reports, was even more amazing.
The creatures probably abandoned the place in order not to be captured, probably waiting for rescue, but the rescue never came.
The creature offered no resistance at all to its capture. It almost couldn't move. It was so fragile.
They wrapped this creature in a net. And put inside this 1 by 1 square meters wood box and gave it straight to the militaries who went there to pick it up.
The mysterious cargo was taken back to the army school.
Now, this was during the morning, all right? The capture took place about 10:30 or so. At that same afternoon, not knowing anything about this, these three girls
were working in a house. They were cleaning the house. And when they finished their work, they were returning home.
It was around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and we were coming home from work. We took a shortcut through Jardim Andoré on our way to Santana, where we live.
We saw this very strange creature, but it didn't notice us at all at first.
It was brown, and its skin looked very soft. The sun was shining on it, and it looked like the outside of a heart. The eyes were big, round, and red, and there were 3 horns on its head, and visible veins on its arms.
And all of a sudden, it just moved its neck like this and faced the girls.
They were very frightened and thought they were being faced with the devil himself. They ran away, arriving at home hysterical with fright.
So they just ran away, got home, and told Mama,
"Mommy, we just saw the devil." And the mother is a very brave woman. She said, "No devil is going to play with my kids." And she managed to get to the location.
She saw 2 footprints, and it was big ones like this. And she felt a terrible smell of ammonia.
The original creature captured by the army was also now in Virginia, being transferred from the army school to the local hospital.
They didn't know what to do with that creature at that time, so they took it to regional hospital.
Será que ele tem coração?
Eu não consigo achar nenhuma madeira para colocar o senhor nele.
Continua tentando.
Now I ask you, our authorities, wouldn't they be smart enough to realize that it would attract so much attention from everybody? Because they took a creature not from this planet to a hospital, which is the main hospital in the whole region. Everybody will see it, as a few doctors saw, as a few nurses saw, a few patients saw. They have to isolate a whole branch of the hospital to put the creature in.
According to witness testimonies, doctors were unable to do anything for the creature, and so it had to be moved again.
But when they realized that the creature couldn't stay there, they had to move the creature in a military operation. So everybody's on the street. It's a Saturday night. Plenty of heat, because of the summer. Lots of people saw the military operation conducting the creature from this hospital to another hospital, which is more discreet because that one is a public hospital.
Unfortunately, the trail of the captured being goes cold at the Humanitas hospital.
People started to talk about this, and everybody wanted to know, demanding answers. The fire brigade denied everything, military police denied everything, and the army school here didn't say a thing.
But the military's explanation for the events of that night are almost more extraordinary than the claims being made by the UFO researchers.
What happened was that on the 20th January 1996, there were violent storms in Varginha. Here in Três Corações, we were having a ceremony. We also had to send some truck for maintenance while they were still under guarantee. So we sent 2 trucks into Varginha for this to happen. To further complicate the story, there were more coincidences relating to the events. At the hospital in Varginha, there was an expectant dwarf couple, which coincided with Eza taking the creature in a truck to the hospital in Varginha.
Well, the town was just going insane because everybody was on the streets, because many UFOs were sighted at that time. So people was just connecting one thing to another.
The tide of panic in Virginia grew. Inevitably, the media quickly picked up the story.
The press got involved in the first day. We have news in Brazil, 8 o'clock, and in that news you could see the girls in the area, Jardim Andere district. So the press was trying to give information to the public in the first day, and I think they were on our side since the very beginning, which is not common, as we know, in other places. The press is very skeptical.
In general, the major circulation newspapers and magazines and the national wild TV programs, radio programs, whatever, they all gave us all support.
The original Roswell expert, Stanton Friedman, appreciated the media's attitude.
The Brazilian press played Varginha pretty straight. There's a long article in a weekly news magazine here. I think that encouraged a lot more witnesses to come forward, and that's good. Anytime the press is fair, not biased pro, but fair, treat it the same way you would any other story, a significant news story, that encourages people to come forward.
It didn't take the authorities long to clamp down on the favorable press coverage. The military held their own press conference.
When the reporters and the whole press jumped on them, they refused to answer anything, and they said also you cannot film from the streets our facilities. And they started to frighten the reporters, like, you're going to have a problem. You can't do this, you can't do that.
Some of the gentlemen who performed the capture came to us and gave a full report of what's going on. Now, it's not second-hand report. Those reports came from people who actually helped to capture, to hold the creatures. So this is the best report someone can have.
We believe that if this case is definitely proved to be true, then it is as important, if not more important, than the case of Roswell.
I wish the Americans have a report of someone holding the Roswell creatures back 50 years ago.
The notion that the Varginha case is the Brazilian Roswell isn't too far off the mark. I mean, it's got involvement of medical people, of military people, of a number of local witnesses, plus more sophisticated witnesses. It seems to involve creatures and a crash and government interest and U.S. government involvement, too, as far as we can tell. On the other hand, there are a number of differences, too. Roswell, of course, I began the research roughly 20 years ago, so there's been plenty of time. A lot of other people have participated. The Roswell case had press coverage, short-lived. You got to find the right newspapers, evening papers for July 8th from Chicago West. That's a small category. We've been able to find a lot of the people with Roswell because it was a base yearbook, there were reunion groups. You know, it makes it a little easier. An important thing is that we have the testimony from big-shot military people, if you want. We don't have that yet, to the best of my knowledge. Open, sworn testimony from important military people involved in the case.
It was a lawyer, Ubirajara Rodriguez, who was the first person to break the story.
What we can say from the evidence, the maximum we can say, is that there is not the slightest bit of doubt that everything did happen. We say this not only because we have heard from people from the town who were indirectly involved, but with people who participated in the principal events.
Although medical staff and the military have given first-hand testimony to researchers, they are unwilling to reveal their identities.
Espero que você entenda. Se você mencionar meu nome, eu serei apagado do mapa.
One of the soldiers was carrying a sack where, as far as I could make out, something was moving inside.
I do not think that any of our principal witnesses are lying. None of them, not the civilians or the military. The statements are concrete, and I believe in the sincerity of all of them.
Well, it was very hard for me to get all this military personnel to give me information, but I got it, and I'm not talking about only soldiers, I'm talking about high-ranking people. I'm talking about lieutenants, majors, captains, sergeants.
Many of the witnesses to the incidents were traced and told not to reveal any more information. Some of the military witnesses who were involved were threatened in a very serious manner by their superiors and told not to release any more information about the case to anyone, even if they did not know who they were giving information to.
The military were threatened by their superior. Don't talk about this to anybody.
But they all told me the same thing, the characteristics, the whole operation, time, who was involved, who was coordinating, what kind of equipment was used. So they all confirmed everything.
One nurse who has been working for the same institution, for the same hospital for over 20 years, was threatened. The principal called her and said, hey, you're not supposed to talk about this to anybody, because if you do, you better start looking for another job.
There are other differences that I'm curious about as much as anything. The description of the bodies connected with the Varginha case makes it sound much more like they were cargo than crew. They seem to be woozy, they didn't have any clothes, the little horns, the color of the skin and stuff. Their reactions did not imply particularly high intelligence. Now, who knows? Maybe this was a crew from a different place, and we don't know what their mental capabilities were or something like that. But you just don't get the feeling, looking at the drawings that have been made, the testimony of the witnesses, that we're dealing with particularly sophisticated aliens here. And I can imagine a cargo craft that ran into some kind of a problem. Pilot error is common, apparently, in which these guys were set loose and weren't really the operators of the craft. Now, with Roswell, I don't have that indication. The bodies seem to be directly connected with the craft, one-piece spacesuits. I'm not saying being nude means anything particularly here, but just a different level of sophistication. I'd also like to know, something we didn't have any capability of doing back in '47, observations of things crashing from the sky, that is, spy satellites. There's an awful lot of sophisticated equipment up there, looking for re-entry of an American satellite, of a Russian satellite, or a flying saucer. So, did we know it was coming down? Was word sent to the Brazilian Air Force? What's the involvement of the American government? Brazilians don't have a lot of spy satellites up there, but the American and Russian governments do. So, there's a larger picture here. I don't know of any previous cases where beings like this were seen before. Maybe this is a new step in what's going on. I don't know. So, there are a lot of puzzles here.
3 months later, just when everyone was starting to calm down, alien beings, it seemed, returned once more to Varginha. A local woman claimed that she saw a creature fitting the same description given back in January by the 3 girls. This incident occurred while she was attending a party at the local zoo.
I went outside to have a cigarette onto the balcony, and I saw something really ugly. It was dark brown and had big, bulging red eyes. It was really ugly. I'm sure it wasn't an animal.
It is a coincidence that around the same time as the sighting of this creature, we were having problems. And there were actually some animals that had died since February. I lost 5 animals, but we do not know why. There was no scientific explanation, and nothing came to light in any post-mortem examinations. This is very strange. I have been director at this zoo for 7 years, and there has never been anything like this.
So what is the legacy of this succession of extraordinary and still unexplained events?
I think we're just having the biggest opportunity to prove that the mankind had some contact with alien creatures. The Roswell incident is a very important one, but it happened 50 years ago. This is recent. We have a lot of information from military sources, civilian sources. I mean fresh information. I've made many videos with military witnesses and civilian witnesses. It's really frustrating to have them in my possession and not being able to show it to the public, to the colleagues and all the UFO community. It's quite convincing because it's almost impossible for them to be telling me all that information if they were not really involved in the whole situation.
It's just unbelievably undeniable. Undeniable. Now, it doesn't matter what the military say, they are hiding. They are hiding. They do have captured aliens in Brazil alive.
One of the good things about the Varginha case is that presumably almost all the witnesses are still alive and will be for some time. I didn't start serious investigation, the serious investigation of Roswell, until 1978, 31 years after it happened. And many of the key witnesses died in the next 10 years, not surprisingly. So we've got some hope here. If major effort is expended to get more witnesses, especially the insiders, the guys at the hospital, the military guys who grabbed and so forth, then there's certainly a good chance we can find those people. So I envy the people here and having some time to work with.
When the perfect time comes up, I will be presenting this information in the World Wide Net. It will be in the CNN news, it will be in United Kingdom, it will be in the whole world. But yes, I intend to do it. But if I do it right now, probably somebody's going to jail tomorrow. Because I do believe we were visited by alien creatures, and I want to know what happened to these creatures.